the level of service that I think that an investor is going to use? So these are all sorts of things. As I said, I'm doing some work with an agency at the moment, and they offer, for all of their landlords, they offer the process of doing their tax returns for their properties. So every property, 580 properties, I reckon there would have been 550 maybe tax returns done just for the property, not for everything else, just for the property. So it's an opportunity for you to go out there and offer these sorts of things. Do you have other services within your armory? Do you have other things that you could be adding? And the way to do this quite simply is to go through and write down all the things that your investors are using right now. So everything that a person, just whiteboard it, just put on a whiteboard, all the things that the investor's using, and then see whether you're offering those services. From a principal's point of view, make sure your staff really know what they're talking about. I did some training for a corporate group about 3 years ago when the Royal Commission was on for the property management sector, for the finance sector. And I had 70 agents in the room, and I was talking about the Royal Commission, the Banking Royal Commission. And I was getting some really blank stares, and I actually asked them, I said, so can we put a hand up? Who's following the Banking Royal Commission? Now I had 70 in the room, two people put their hand up. So I questioned those that weren't, and I said, why is it you're not following this? And a lot of them were younger property managers just starting in the industry. And the response generally was, I don't have a mortgage, I don't understand it, it's boring, it's not for me, what's it got to do with us? And the flip side to that was I then turned around and said, it's got everything to do with you because it's impacting your landlords. So here we come back from a principal's point of view. If you've got staff that don't understand finance, you need to sort that out. Bring a finance person in and get them to understand that. Train your staff on investment skills. So in the agencies that I do consultancy work with, I actually have components where I'll do training for the team around understanding investment, the terminology, understanding gearing, understanding leverage, because that's the knowledge that they want. That's the communication and the language that the landlords will be asking for. Have a look at your ancillary services, and are you an educator? Become the go-to place for and even if you're copying other information, put somebody on a retainer on a monthly basis to write your articles, your blogs, your newsletters, do a webinar, do those sorts of things. Become, particularly in this scenario with COVID at the moment, if you're not at the forefront, if you're not out there, in many instances, your clients, existing and new, will think you're closed. So if you're not putting yourself out there, now is the most amount of time you need to be out there. Blogs, emails, newsletters, communication, whatever it may be. For principals, I'm talking at the moment, a lot of principals. It's a different session that I do, but all principals at the moment should be personally picking up the phone to every one of their landlords. Every landlord should be spoken to by the principal at the moment. And just to see if there's anything that they can help them with. So here's the part that I'd like you to ask yourself from a positioning point of view. If your client was going to go and buy an investment property today, when do you get told about that? Are you part of their investor advisory team? And if you're not, embed yourself into that. So an investor would normally, if they're going to go and buy an investment property, so they'd speak to the bank or the mortgage broker. They'd probably speak to their accountant for gearing and structures and that sort of stuff. They might be looking at talking to their superannuation planner, so whether I put into super or not. And they're probably going to talk to one or two other people, maybe a solicitor for the contract, but very rarely they'll be talking to the property manager. Very rarely. And the reason for that is because we are seen typically as property managers, not investment advisors, not investment consultants, not as investment concierge. So embed yourself into their investment team. So these are the sorts of things that I'd like you to become, like you to do. Here's my little tagline. Fees will become completely irrelevant the moment you become an advisor. When you're a service provider, fees are important. When you're an advisor, fees are not relevant. Important. The reason why I'm saying that is because I see it far too often where people leave. They'll leave an agency from a 6% to a 6%. Why? It's the same. I'm not getting anything from them. It's just the same. So you need to become an advisor. You need to offer your landlords something they cannot get anywhere else. Train your frontline staff, which I spoke about. But here's the part that I want to ask the principals and the managers to understand, even the senior managers, department managers. This is important for you. When I'm looking at portfolio sizes, I don't look at the number of properties. I look at the value, the gross cap value. And I use a rough figure, you know. If you've got properties, if you've got your average property in your area is $500,000, you've got a portfolio of 150 properties, the capital value is $75 million. Would you give $75 million worth of superannuation to a 22-year-old kid that's done 4 weeks worth of agent rep license study? And if you would, you're a fool, because there's no way you would do that. But we do that in our industry all the time, and we wonder why we're not taken seriously in many instances. So train your staff. If a person's got $75 million worth of asset under their management, it's not 200 doors or 150 tenancies or 100 landlords. It's the capital value of property you've got under management. That's what you should be looking at. From an agency point of view, you should be going in and trying where possible to create some rough figures and say our agency manages $2.4 billion worth of property approximately. Really impressive. No one else is doing that. They're all talking about 500 properties. 500 properties means nothing. I'll give you an example. I was again talking to an agent just recently, and I said to them, and ask yourself this question. I want you to, and this is a perler. What's the oldest or the longest property that you've got in your management? So what is the longest property? And at that particular stage, he said it was 22 years. And it was interesting because about 8 or 9 years ago, I did a presentation in Sydney, and I had a property which we had, my agency, I didn't have it all the time, but the agency I had, we had managed that property for 26 years. And I'd got on there and I'd said, this is a property we've managed for 26 years. I put a photograph up of the property and the room. There's about 80 or 90 people in the room, and it was like, oh yeah, fair enough, who cares? And then I put a photograph up of my receptionist. She was 22 years old. And I said, and that we've been managing that property longer than she's been born. And now people started to realize that 26 years for management in one relationship is a long time. You do 5 years in relationship with the management now, you should be jumping up and down. 10 years, if you've got a landlord that's been with you for 10 years, they should be over your place on a Sunday afternoon for barbecues. You should be going out of your way to retain them. Because if you don't look after them, somebody else is going to do that. Go back through your Google reviews. The number of times that I speak to agents and I see their Google reviews and they don't respond to them. If you get negatives, who cares? Jump in there every time you get a negative, particularly if it's a tenant. Every time you get in a negative review, go back through your Google reviews, respond to that and the reasons why you did that. Tenant says, I didn't get my bond back. You write back, say, yes, I'm really sorry, Freddie. The reasons why some people, not them, but the reasons why some people don't get all their bond back is because we're really thorough in making sure we do our vacate inspections. We're really thorough in making sure that the property is prepared for the next tenant. We're really thorough in making sure that the exit condition report correlates back through to the entry condition report. Now, all of a sudden, you're now in sales mode. You're in sales mode for the new person that's coming on board. What I want to do is I want to see if someone's going to go into Google review and give you a bit of a hammering. I want you to be smart enough to go back through and educate the person that's reading it that, hey, I did the right thing. Don't just leave it up there. So go back through. Have you got a Google review strategy? In many offices, we run competitions with our teams. Who can get the most amount of Google reviews? We might do a lunch, a lunch at a winery or something like that. Who can get the most amount of Google reviews in a particular month with their name in it?